Hi, everybody, and welcome to reInvent. If somebody hasn't said that to you already, good afternoon. You're here. This is SV328, enhancing observability for Amazon ECS to gain actionable insights. My name is Stephen David. I'm a principal solutions architect with AWS, and my co-presenter is Lucy. Lucy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone, and we're very excited you're here. My name is Lucy Hartung. I'm a senior business development specialist from AWS. I was very impressed. There are people waiting half hour on the line waiting for this session. So thanks for being here with us for the next hour. We hope to give you valuable information on how to get actionable insight on Amazon ECS. So let's get a start. So this is today's agenda. We want to start to help you understand what are some customer challenges today, and then dive into a little bit more on what are the benefits of observability, why we need to observe on ECS. Then we have prepared 4 real-life scenarios incorporated with demos to give you a real action in how to leverage some of the capabilities and features from AWS for you to gain that actionable insights. Then in the end, we want to leave you with some resources and next steps that you can take away and apply the knowledge you learned from this session and to your day-to-day work. So with that being said, I want to just kind of learn about our audience a little bit better. How many of you are currently building workloads or applications on Amazon ECS? Just by raise your hand. Awesome. Well, that's why you're here. So let's start with some foundations of why ECS, why containers, right? Containers really help our customers to innovate faster, to innovate better. How is that achievable? Well, containers are portable. All your application packages are in a one single container when you're building that, as well as it's consistent because all the containers run in the same OS. Because of the innovation, because of the portability and consistency that allows you to get to automation faster, which give you that faster speed to deliver your software, but also reduce the overhead of resources. So this is why a lot of you are choosing building stuff on ECS today. And let's not forget, there's a lot of containers options out there, right? What is most important feedback we got from our customers is the simplicities of building on ECS. Customers kept telling us, I love building on ECS because it has seamless integrations with all other AWS services. So let's take a little bit deeper on this how automation workflow on a typical application on ECS. Start from the build and deploy a pipeline with agility and speed, all the way to observe with metrics, logs, healthy of your applications, and overall, across the board, we have security measurements throughout the whole process. And at the same time, let's not forget about orchestration. That's a very important piece. When you have automation, orchestrations can help you decide network, compute, storage automatically. At the same time, we're able to handle all other important aspects of automations, such as scheduling, auto-scaling. So this is a foundation of why many of you choosing building workloads and applications on ECS. So it could be a refresher knowledge for some of you who maybe hasn't seen why ECS is so awesome, right, for us. Oh, oops. There's something wrong here. Did we just talk about how awesome ECS is, right? And looks like, doesn't matter how awesome ECS is, how much you love ECS, things do break. Your containers breaks time to time. And not every day is sunshine and rainbow, right? You got to go fix problems. And Our goal here is not to tell you, hey, we can help you build 100% availability on ECS. And that's just, false statement. Like, we're not trying to set you up for failure here. Our goal is to help you when a situation like this happens, when your container is all over the place and things breaks, and you have the right sets of tools and capabilities to know what to look for, and how to fix that issue. So let's talk about observability matters. What is observability? Start with getting that visibility into your containers, whether it's metrics, whether it's logs, and to troubleshoot a real-time issue, right? That's kind of the foundation. You have an issue, you want to figure out how can I fix that issue. But observability is not just about getting to the root cause, fixing the issue. It's more than that. As the chart moves towards the right, you can see there's a more business benefit around observing your ECS. Things like, how's your end user experience on your ECS workloads and applications? Let's say you build an application on ECS. There must be a user, right, on the other end interacting with your application. Is that page load failed for that user? Can that user do a checkout for some, let's say it's a web application? That experience you want to maintain and making sure it's not broken. And we often get a situation, your customer maybe complain, hey, I couldn't load up this page, I cannot register this. You want to be ahead of that to understand that information to fix the issue before your end users experience that issue. So that's also observability. And then last but not least, the cost. This might not seem very obvious to a lot of people, but how many times that your manager or maybe a project lead come to you and say, hey, how much is it cost to build this application? We need a budget, right? We need a budget for next year. We want to understand how much it's going to cost for this application. Or is your application overexpend, like cost way too much to build? These are informations also important in the aspects of you building workloads or applications on ECS. And that's overall is a whole spectrum of aspects of observability. So with that being said, let me hand it to my partner in crime, Steven, talk about the first real about container insights on ECS.
All right, so yeah, thank you. That's good. So we've talked a little bit about what is why we're here. Now, how do we go about this, right? So if we have a situation where we're experiencing some kind of error, and we're going to go through 4 different ones. I'll handle a couple of them, then Lucy will come back. What do we do about that? How can we actually get insights into these, and how can we use the tools that are available in AWS to help us understand what's happening with our cluster, right? And one situation we might be in is where we have multiple applications deployed. We have some way that it's not a single account, a single application. How can I make this more of an application-centric view? How can I get insights across my application and the multiple resources that make it up? Maybe most of them are in ECS, maybe some of them belong elsewhere, or there are other services that I'm using. What can I do to make that happen? How can I understand the health of my application? How can I understand which KPIs I should be looking at? How can I see what are common ones that I might want to go after, kind of our golden metrics? Can I look at my fault rates, my latency, things of that nature to dig in to these applications and get a good sense of, okay, let me get to the problem faster. How can I make this something where I can really understand what I'm doing and hopefully get to a resolution more quickly? Debug the issues. This is kind of along those lines. All right, I'm looking at a bunch of metrics. I'm looking at a bunch of logs. I got my traces here. How do I understand that to then piece it together to get where I can go and make the changes to the code base to make that happen? And then finally, maybe an end-to-end vision for the application. Maybe I'm not debugging something, but I'm actually working to improve it. How can I make this application more responsive? How can I use my resources more readily? Let's look at that in a little more detail. First, I want to take a look at the application that we're going to be playing with. So all of our demos are based off of this application. This is basically a watch store. It's a sample application that we have. We use it in a lot of our demos, so you may see it repeated across, especially across the container ecosystem in AWS, right? So just real quick, so this is the home page for it. You have the application itself. It has a catalog. I can kind of sort by types of watches. I can go in there, and once I have the type of watch, I can go and add it to a cart. And then there's a checkout process, and great. So once I have the checkout process, then I'm using this to go through the store. And that's a multi-step checkout process, so multiple things can go wrong during that. Mostly we just want you to have a little bit of a visual of the type of application we're working for. So let's assume at some point I'm the owner of the infrastructure associated with this application, and they've said, hey, it's not being as responsive. We're having an issue with the application itself, right? And that's all they've given you. It says something's going on, tell us what's up. You know, we're getting more and more complaints with this system. You know, can you help us debug what's going on? So I started my console, and if I look here, it's just a regular home page, but there's something you may not have seen before, and that's this right there, that My Applications. So it's a widget that you can have on that home page. You can use that to gather a number of resources around your application. Everything from its monitoring, some of the CPU and the compute that's associated with it. Let's look at that a little more closely. So I've set this up. I've got my watch application. There's some general information about the watch application that's up here at the top. Then there's, let me get that to go again. Then I have all my compute. Initially it's highlighting the EC2 compute. It's giving me, you know, are there alarms associated with it? And I can see right away, oh, and I've got my Lambda kind of compute that's here. When I scroll back up here, I can see right away, there's nothing standing out, right? It's just kind of functioning, right? So, okay, so not necessarily getting the insights, but at least I can get that gathered in one place, because there's other information about my application here that I might want to go into. So I have some cost information. Nobody's asked me about cost for this particular scenario, but it's there. I do have some security issues I might want to dive into later, because while nobody's asking about them, I've got some high severity things going there. We should probably look at that later. What I do have, when I scroll back down a little bit, there was no alarms on this one. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what, let's go to CloudWatch. I know I can dive right into my CloudWatch information from here, check out my EC2s that are associated with that. For the most part, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot going on here. I am seeing some pretty big spikes for this application in the networking. So when I come over here to the network side, that's my first clue that maybe there's something going on that side, right? And they're not complaining that they're getting a lot of errors, but they're saying things are slow. So, okay, maybe there's something there. But to really dig into that, I'm going to go to our container insights. And we just upgraded this. We just enhanced this for ECS in general. This is the new look and feel for enhanced container insights, right? So we now have these little hexagon type things. I have one cluster in this account that I'm working with. If you have multiples, you get a lot of those. They would start showing up, and you can click through your different clusters to switch between the ones you want to look at. And that gives you a chance to kind of dig in at that level for them. And then I have some high-level metrics that are just here on the initial enhancement page, right, on the container, so the container insights page. I can get a look at it and see my CPU's not look like it's doing anything crazy. It's actually pretty low in general, right? So that's not bad. I have more detailed CPU metrics down here, including I can just do memory. And all of that looks pretty straightforward. But the important thing is that I have the ability to go investigate it right away. I can go check it out right here. So let's dig deeper. Let's go into the performance metrics associated with that. And now I can do this with my ECS workloads. I can split this, and I have information that's here right now, and it's by the cluster. If I want to, I could go and split it and look at it at an instance level. I can look at it at a task level by services. I can kind of slice and dice this to figure out what's going on. And maybe we'll need to do that in this scenario, maybe we won't. But the important thing is that I can, and I can start digging in at the level that I want to look at it. And you start being able to take that and say, I'm not looking at the whole watch application, maybe I'm looking at one of the subcomponents. I can do that in this interface, right? In this case, I come down, and right away it stands out to me that, you know what, my latency is also standing out here in this situation as well. So I'm starting to feel like, okay, you know, this could be a problem with the latency of the application. I mean, there's something there. Now, I don't really know what component in the application I'm having a problem with, but I know that there's something going on here. So let's see how we can use these tools to dig into it a little further. So I'm suspicious of that. I just peek at a couple of the other metrics. They're all looking pretty mundane. If I come down here, and wait a minute, let me pause real quick before I click that. Again, I can get a snapshot of my CPU usage, I can get a snapshot of my memory usage, and now I'm looking at it by the different services that make up my application. That's what all these blue links are. These are the various services that make up the application we're looking at. I'm still not seeing anything that really stands out as this is the thing, right? There's the only thing that looks like potential is that latency issue. So I'm saying, okay, now when I click in and I look at my application signals, which are hooked into the same interface, they're integrated, I can start seeing the first red thing on the screen, the first thing that says, hey, something might not be right here. And what this red text here, the SLI status, is I have some service level indicators, SLIs, and I've set thresholds for those, and if you breach them, then I'm setting alarms off and I'm saying, hey, this should be responding faster, this should be behaving differently than it is, you should probably check this out. So, okay, so I know that there's something here that I need, that's worth going to look at. I do that, it takes me to application signals, and I see right away, I've had a bump in latency that's not pretty typical for the rest of the use for this application. And that bump in latency, when I look into it, is really related to this cart store. Now I've narrowed down my component a little bit. I don't know if y'all, I want to make sure y'all catch that, but I've narrowed down my component. I was looking at the whole application. I've got it now down to one of the components of my application, and I'm figuring out where this problem might be. So, okay, great. So, and I can also see in here which action it seems to be associated with. It's doing it on the Git for that action. So I take that, I clicked on the chart there for latency to get a trace, and I can go dig into the traces right away. Once I get the traces, you know, I can pull it up, I can kind of see what's happening in that space. And if I look here, it's not reasonable for my web application to have 800 millisecond latency on any small component that's happening. So now right away, I can see, you know, through this, I'm not expecting this from this application. That is something I should get my developer to go look at. I've now narrowed it from the broader application down to the component that's doing it. It's probably something in this cart's controller that's causing this latency, right? And I can go back to my developer and I can say, hey, we're getting reports of issues. People are having a bad experience. I've helped you figure out where you should be looking at it. Please go investigate this. What went wrong, right? And see what they're doing in that space. So that's the first scenario. So that's one where I needed to investigate something that was a little less tangible as far as what was happening. You notice there wasn't a clean error from my application. It was just responding slowly. All right. So in this next situation, we have one where we actually have a critical error. It's actually failing. It's new. In this scenario, this wasn't happening before. So the application was humming along. All of a sudden, my phone started ringing. It's probably 3 in the morning. That's the way that works, right? And you know, I've come in there and I need to see what's going on. And there's a number of ways I can go at getting at this. In this particular case, I'm going to see if I can leverage log insights to see if I can get to the solution. And I think for this particular problem, it's cater-made to make that be an interesting place to look to go get it. I could also go look at anomalies if I'm seeing something where it's a pattern of what's happening, and I might need to trace it over time. We'll see if we need to do that or not. But I want to correlate the error message to something that I might do to get a resolution, right? I want to see if I can not just figure out what's going on, but maybe I can make a recommendation on how you can resolve this problem. So let's see if we can do that with this particular setup. So if I get in there and play. So I've come in. This case, I'm already on the screen. I'm going to go straight in and look at application signals. I'm doing that because I was in the application. I know what application I was in. I probably started off something like the watch store on my applications, but we're already in there. I'm seeing 2 errors right off. Like, it didn't take me very long to figure out, hey, something's going wrong. Again, the system's telling me I've set up some SOOs and stuff to make that happen. So I'm like, okay, but let's see if I can identify it pretty quickly, looking at metrics and see what's going on. I'm seeing a low latency, nothing too big. You know, really all these things are going pro. The only thing is I am seeing more faults. And that's where I'm going to go investigate. I click on there, I can look, and again, I'm back to my kind of golden metrics up here. In this case, the faults in errors is the one that I'm thinking is giving me the most insights in what's happening. I can click on that. I can look in there and see my, again, I'll go down, check out my traces. And the idea is that it's correlating all these things, right? They're able to interact and give me some insights on what's happening. And I can go check and I can see it is my checkout service here. In this case, it's having some issues. So I'm just going to go dig into I'm going to use log insights to go check and dig into the logs for that service. So right here, when I get to log insights, I have this generic query that would get me a lot of information across my application. I want to narrow it down to just the checkout service because I've already kind of figured out it's probably in that ballpark, right? So get that going. So I know where my checkout logs are. They're down here in the retail tasks. So I'm going to limit my query to that. And then once I do that, I'm going to say, oh, sorry, I think this is the carts on this one. Yeah, this one's the carts. So once I get in there, if I do that, then I can go ahead and say, look, let me see if I search for cart, it should give me a list of what I've got going. And sure enough, when I do that, I can kind of see something that's kind of interesting here. So I have the actual errors. And there's a number of ways I could have gotten this error, right? If I was back on application signals, I could have gotten the errors by going to look at the exceptions. What's more interesting on this page is I can start seeing when the errors occurred, right? Those blue bars magically started showing up a couple hours before this event, right? So, and then I can see exactly what the error is that's coming in. I'm getting a list mismatch that wasn't there before that event occurred. So great, so I have that. Once I get to that, I can say, you know what? Let me go see if anything happened with this service a couple hours ago. Do I have any evidence that something changed here? So I'm going to go just look at the cluster itself, because we've made some modifications to the cluster itself and the output that it gives you. So we have this deployment page, and this deployment page is one of the things we've added. This gives a good sense of activities that have happened with this service in the near past. Now, if this was a situation where I deployed a new service and it was just broken, it would have rolled back. ECS does that pretty well. Sylvia, I'll raise your hand. Like if I just roll out a service and the health checks don't pass, the thing just rolls back for me. So this service is kind of working, but there's a feature within the service that's struggling. And we saw that the list mismatch, whenever I call a specific API, that was not functioning anymore. And I can tell from here that this was a new deployment today, just a couple hours earlier. Now, that happened a couple hours earlier. I started getting errors a couple hours earlier. It's not a big stretch to go back to the guys that deployed this and said, hey, you need to roll back to the previous version and figure out what's going on. You've introduced a new error. Do a little more testing on that list function on the cart service. So there you can see where I took it, I went in, I can kind of narrow down what's going on there. And then once I get down closer to the issue, I can kind of cross these boundaries to get a correlation to something that can actually be fixable, right? Let's look at scenario number 3. So this next one, wait a minute. Sorry, that's just replaying that. Let me go back. All right, this next one's I think can be a little tricky at times. This is where I have a situation where the service isn't consistently breaking. Like that last one, the service kind of worked, but the thing that was broken all the time. You roll it out, it just broke all the time. In this scenario we're running into, this is a little more of, it works most of the time, but sometimes in certain situations it breaks. It's an intermittent error. These are our favorites if you're a developer, because you're like, it's not breaking for me, but it keeps breaking for all my customers, so this is not good. The application's health is, overall, it's pretty good. Like it's actually reporting a healthy application. Matter of fact, the health check seems to be passing all the time. But again, if you follow the right path with the right kind of inputs, it breaks, right? So we want to see what can we do to get around that. This is also something that I've run into a lot with if I'm calling APIs, especially external APIs. You don't have control over it. How can I get information from the outside to understand what's happening? And you can trace those with these services. And then finally, the goal here is to reduce our time for detection and hopefully our time for recovery. Let's look at this. So in this situation, I'm coming back in. I know a little bit less about this at this time, so I am coming back to the watch store, my applications in the watch store. I want to use this to help contextualize it for me. Again, I look around a little bit. I'm like, okay, my compute looks healthy. It doesn't look like there's anything too terribly wrong going on there. I've got a couple of spikes, but they don't seem outrageously big. Still got my cost and severity issues. I will be addressing those later on, especially after this video goes on live. But I do have something new here. I have a canary that's being tracked as part of my application, and it's actually throwing up an alarm. Now, this alarm comes from another feature that we haven't talked about yet. So one of the things I have running with this application to help me track when I have a new issue is I have these synthetic runnings, right? So I have this canary, and it's not just a simple health check. It's not just calling the API, right? It doesn't just do a check of the home page and I'm good. This is actually a walkthrough of a workflow within my system, right? So I'm using this, and it's my retail store full walkthrough. So that little thing when we first showed the application earlier, and I kind of clicked the catalog, I added something to my cart, and I started to show out the checkout process. This does that whole process, actually through the checkout. And I did that by going ahead and just turning on the recorder for this service, recorded me clicking through the application, and it added it to my canary. And it gives me screenshots, it gives me a lot of information. I'm not focused on that here today, but what's really nice is it tells me when I have more complicated errors. Like here, I got a lot of red dots. I narrowed it down to the more recent time. This is now just focused on the last hour, and I'm not getting all red dots, right? I kind of prefer all red or all blue. The red being the ones that are broken, the blue being the ones that are functioning correctly. When I get it, sometimes it's working, sometimes it's not. And when I get that, especially when I'm giving it consistent input, because this is the same input every time, that's really not friendly, right? Like, so that can be difficult to track. So it can be nice to have these kind of canaries working through to understand, is it the kind of input I'm giving it? Is it something about the service itself that's struggling on its own occasionally? Which at this point I would be more suspicious of that latter because it's consistent input, right? I go in, I can see that this is definitely having some issues, but this workflow does work over the whole application, right? So I don't know which component yet is having the big issue there. I just know that something within my application is breaking. So let's go back to application signals. You'll find that this is a good way to kind of connect the dots across these. And sure, right away, I can see that I, again, have a service level indicator on this service, this one actually being my checkout service, and it's not meeting its expected returns, right? It's breaching the contract. I expect it to perform better than it is. Right? I can look at that. I can see that some of its services that it's talking to are consistently having an issue, and I can see what percentage of issue they're having. So the checkout service is having an issue. My front-end service, the retail store UI, is also representing an issue, but it's at a much lower percentage, likely because when you interact with it, sooner or later you interact with the checkout store. So at that point, I'm feeling really suspicious of my checkout service. So I'm going to go back in here. I want to look at the metrics, understand what they're kind of telling me. I'm not seeing a lot with my latency, right? There is a little bit there, but that doesn't seem to be as big of an issue. I am seeing some interest here in the graphs, right? So I've got some information on the left here. This one on the left is really all about my top and what's happening. I can see there might be retries or something happening there. Why is it breaking away from the group? But really the one that I'm looking at now, that's saying that it has more errors than the others. The orange line that I was just highlighting, it's got a higher rate of faults and problems that's going on there. And then really this last one, I'm definitely seeing more faults. It's starting to break away up high. The orange line's going above the others in a significant way. It really shouldn't be. It should be trailing around somewhere near what the others are. So again, now I have a good sense that the checkout service is the main culprit of my issue. And I can come over and see my faults. When I click on those faults, I can really dig in and see what's going on there. And I can see that it's the Git flow, right? It's not just the checkout service in general. If I look here, my post and my health check are doing rather well on the responses. I don't have SLIs on them, but they're not reporting errors. I am getting errors on the checkout service. I go in, I look at my traces. I can check out what's going on there in the traces. And in the previous example, we went off and we dug into a different section to see what was happening. Here, I'm going to look at, I just want to see my flow overall for the checkout. That seemed fine. But I do actually have errors in this flow. I can click on that error to get a sense for what is happening, and maybe use that to help me get down to the problem, right? And we embed a bit of the information over here. Once I do that, it'll come over. I have some overview information, some resources that you might be using, But in this case, I want to look at exceptions. And am I seeing an exception? And yes, I am. So I named this exception. It's obviously not a real exception, but it really stands out because it say, hey, I'm getting a random fault in this situation. But I can go trace that down. I can go now look in the code that's associated with this. It's part of my get checkout process. That's a piece of code in my application. I can see the actual error that's being thrown. I have good context to go solve this and figure out, okay, how do I correct this issue? The important thing I want you to take from these couple of scenarios is the integration between now enhanced container insights, which lets you really dive into a lot of the metrics and understanding, and how those can connect to your application signals, which is more application focused, where you can kind of see if there's something kind of going wrong in that scenario. And then you can also even dig in deeper should the thing you're looking for be in the logs, right? All right, let me get past that. With that, I'd like to hand it back over to Lucy. Right. Sure.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, so Stephen talked about how you can leverage these capabilities to troubleshoot issues, fixing problems. Now let's dive into, this might not be the super obvious one, right? The cost. What is the cost insight on your ECS here? So first, as I mentioned, that these are cost important for help you allocating the budget for your applications or whatever, people need that information, whether it's a project lead, whether it's your management team, as well as, you can set up a alert and notifications when you overspend on certain applications or workloads that you get notified right away. So let's dive into that a little bit, how we can take a look at the costs, right? So we want to start with some basic and foundational, how to set up this. What we learn is a lot of customers actually don't know, where you go to your cost management, right? And then you scroll down all the way to cross preference. And from the cross preference, there's an option here. You have to turn on what's called ECS split cost allocation. So we want to, you all know this, basic setup, you need to have this function or you need to have this setting to set up correctly. Give me 1 second. And to be able to understand your split cost for your ECS cluster. The reason being that is because we have that feature or we have that preference to just turn it on, now we can export that data, right? So this is where we come to the same console, this billing and cost management, where we go into the data explorer, and here we can see that you have your split data costs enabled, which you do have that information. And this is the foundational setup for what we're going to talk about, show in the demo in a bit. So why we need all this to essentially set up, because this will give us the data. How we can leverage that data to perform more advanced queries to the things that you're actually looking for, right? So we have the split cost data. Now we're going to take that into Athena queries that we can analyze that cost a little bit further. Just gave a second. So here we're using that split cost data to run some queries. We have some pre-built queries here. Let's close out this query and let's start running a new query that we pre-build. And let's take a look at that, how typically this looks like, right? And this is highly customizable. Depends on what items that you want to look for in the ECS. And these are the pre-built queries that we define, things like line items, usage types, and whatnot. But you can query whichever things that you're looking for particular on your ECS. So let's run that query quickly. And let's take a look at what that query actually generates. So now we're generating a preview of that query we just run. So from here, you get a nice list a list of items, things like, item ID, everything that's in your ECS clusters that you define in that query will show up, right? Things like usage type, product ID, and I'm just gonna scroll, a little bit further to show you all the stuff that just been generated in this nice form. However, this is still a list view. And when your project lead or your manager asking about budget, this might not be the super nice way of presenting this data too. So we have this nice list view, how we can present that data in a more presentable manner, right? You can leverage our BI tool to actually enhance that information. So I'm gonna pause here. This is what we used. So from transition, that list view was Athena query we just run. Now we're getting into Amazon BI tool QuickSight. So based on that data set, now we build we have a couple of pre-built dashboards to dive you into that cost of the ECS clusters here. So let's first look at the first thing we want to take a look at, the ECS usage type. This is your entire ECS cluster. What are the usage type? How much they cost? And as you can see, this big blue chart, right? The usage type, it might be the CPU that costs most of the usage type here. Looks like US1, and then what's the next chart here? And looks like the US West 2. So you can clearly understand what are things that taking most of the costs in your ECS cluster here. And let's now also, you understand there's a list view as well as a GB, right? CPU versus GB. Now let's take a look at the ECS cluster over line item. And this is where Steven is showing the demo of the watch store. So this is the watch store cost, but you might have some other application on ECS that you can clearly define, this is how much it costs to build my watch store versus this is a cost of building some other applications on ECS. And then turn into a little bit to the right-hand side. This is where you can see the region. If you have multi-region teams building applications, and you can clearly see which region spend how much on the ECS. Is that aligned with what your expectation is? Looks like the East team spending most on this ECS clusters, followed by the West team, right? So it can divide by regions as well to that. Now we go on top a little bit to dive specifically into the watch store that Steven just demoed. So that's the second layer of the particular application watch store. How much usage type, CPU versus GB. So that gave you a second layer of a particular application, which is watch store we're demoing here, of the information. And then last but not least is we also be able to define by task item. So for this particular watch store, there's all these tasks. How much is per each task that actually costs for the ECS, right? So that way you have a very clear definition or clear understanding of the cost of particular applications or your ECS clusters overall for your project. And when your boss calls you, say, hey, how much is my application cost? You can tell them right away and show this very presentable view of the costs associated to your workloads or applications. All right, so with that, we want to basically get your containers back to the most organized way. So as we recap, Steven talked about tons of capabilities based on various different customer scenarios, whether it's fixing real-time issues, whether it's intermittent issues, or fixing API issues. I talk about the cost. This is all going to give you the two sets that your container is going to back to the most organized way and your life can go on. Not saying that maybe in a couple of days it's going to go back to the earlier slide where it broke, but at least when it get back to the earlier stage, now you say, hey, I know exactly what to do. I know exactly where to look for the information. I can fix back to this ideal stage as soon as possible. So with that, I do want to leave you guys with some resources and next steps, that information you can take away from this session to really help you on your daily work. First, start with one observability workshop. And this is a workshop that's free to all of our customers. You can contact your your AWS representative to schedule a workshop for one observability workshop. And it's free for customers to testing out all the capabilities Stephen and I just mentioned in that. Secondly is the best practice. And if you want to learn some best practices, how to set up alarms, how to get metrics, how to looking for logs, these are in our best practices session. And if you're CDK and Terraform user, we also have pre-built CDK and Terraform template that you can start with observability much faster, so accelerate your setup for getting onto our observability journey. Last but not least is if you want to learn more, there's tons of e-learnings on our skill builders for observability that you can look into. And just in the end, I want to raise your hand if you feel you learned something new in this session today. Awesome. Well, I hope that's going to help you your ECS journey with us. And with that being said, I want to thank you. I really appreciate your time here, especially after lunch, spending was here with us today, making sure you fill out the survey, give us feedback, and see how we do. And